Emperor Thane did not tell Minji his proposition right away. Instead, he did something that shocked both Minji and Prince Kale. He asked if he could stay on Earth for a few days to learn about humans. Before Minji could answer, he used his technology to disguise himself as a normal human man. He looked like a tall businessman with kind eyes. "I want to understand your people," he told Minji. "If my son sees something special in humans, then I must see it too. Will you show me how your people live?" Minji was nervous about spending time with the most powerful being in the galaxy, but she agreed. She could see that he was trying to understand something important. The next morning, she took him through the slums, showing him how people survived in difficult conditions. Emperor Thane watched everything with amazement. He saw a woman share her last piece of bread with hungry children who were not her own. He saw men work together to fix a broken water pipe, even though none of them would get paid for it. He saw teenagers teaching younger children to read using books made from scraps of paper. The emperor had expected to find humans fighting each other for resources. Instead, he found communities that took care of each other. He saw people who had almost nothing but still found ways to help their neighbors. When he asked Minji why they did this, she looked confused by the question. "They help because people need help," she said. "Why would they not helping my empire?" The emperor said, "People only help others when they get something in return. They trade favors or money or power, but these humans help for free. That is what makes us human." Minji said, "If we only help people who could help us back, then we would not really be helping. We would just be making deals." The emperor spent 3 days walking through different parts of the city with Minji. She showed him markets where vendors gave food to people who could not pay. She showed him schools where teachers used their own money to buy supplies for poor children. She showed him hospitals where doctors worked extra hours without pay to help more patients. But what amazed Emperor Thane most was watching Minji herself. She stopped to help an old man carry heavy bags. She gave her lunch to a homeless woman. She picked up trash that was not hers and threw it away. When the emperor asked her why she did these things, she seemed confused that he was asking people need help. She said, "It does not matter if they are strangers. We are all connected. If I help them today, maybe someone will help me tomorrow. But even if they do not help me, I still help them, and that makes the world a little better." The emperor began to understand what his son had discovered. Humans had developed something that his advanced civilization had lost over thousands of years of conquest. They had kept their ability to care about others without expecting rewards. They had kept their compassion. Meanwhile, Prince Kale was showing Minji wonders from across the galaxy. He took her aboard his father's flagship, where she walked through gardens filled with flowers from hundreds of different worlds. She saw fruits that glowed like lanterns and trees that sang in harmonious voices. She met beings made of pure energy who communicated through colors. But what surprised Prince Kale was Minji's reaction to all these marvels. She was more interested in the stories behind them than in their beauty or value. She wanted to know about the gardener who had grown the singing trees. She asked about the home worlds of the energy beings. She listened carefully when he told her about planets that had been destroyed by war. "You have seen the most amazing things in the galaxy," Prince Kale said, "and you ask about the people who made them. Why? Because the things are beautiful," Minji said, "but the people who made them are more important. The flowers will die someday, but the love that the gardener put into growing them will last forever." Prince Kale realized that Minji saw the universe differently than anyone he had ever met. She did not see conquests and territories. She saw homes and families and communities. She did not see resources to be taken. She saw gifts to be shared. On the third day, Emperor Thane returned to Minji's apartment looking thoughtful. He had seen enough to understand why his son cared so much about this human girl and her people. He sat at her small table and looked at both Minji and Prince Kale. "I have learned something important these past few days," he said. "I have spent centuries building an empire through fear and force. I thought this made me strong. But you have shown me a different kind of strength." "What kind of strength?" Minji asked. "The strength to care about others even when they cannot help you back," the emperor said. "The strength to be kind even when kindness costs you something. The strength to hope even when things look hopeless." Prince Kale smiled. He had hoped his father would understand, but he had not been sure. "Your people are remarkable, Minji. They have something that my empire needs." But their peaceful conversation was interrupted by an urgent message that appeared in the air like a hologram. It was from Admiral Vex, the leader of the rebel forces. That had been hunting Prince Kale. The message was simple and terrifying. Emperor Thane, I know your son is on that primitive planet. Give him to me or I will destroy every human city from orbit. You have 1 day to ditch it. Minji felt ice in her stomach. As she looked at the evil face in the hologram, Admiral Vex had scars across his face and eyes that burned with hatred. His fleet of ships was already surrounding Earth, ready to attack. The message disappeared, leaving the three of them in horrible silence. The rebels found us, Prince Kale said. They want to kill me to end the royal bloodline. If they succeed, they will rule the galaxy through terror and violence. Emperor Thane stood up and began pacing around the small room. His face was hard with anger. No one threatens my son, and no one threatens a world under my protection. But Minji did something that surprised both aliens. She stood up and looked directly at Emperor Thane. I will go with the rebels, she said, if they want a hostage to trade. For Earth's safety, they can have me. Both Prince Kale and his father stared at her in shock. She was offering to sacrifice herself to save people she barely knew. She was willing to die so that Earth could live. This was exactly the kind of courage and selflessness that the Emperor had been observing in humans. You cannot do this, Prince Kale said. I will not let you sacrifice yourself for me. But Minji had already made up her mind. Earth is my home, she said. These people are my family. If my life can save millions of lives, then it is a good trade. Emperor Thane looked at this brave young woman who was willing to die for strangers and made a decision that would change galactic history. He would not let the rebels have her. He would not let them destroy Earth, and he would not let them kill his son. There was another way, a way that had never been tried before. Minji, he said, you have shown me that true leadership is not about having power over others. It is about caring for others and protecting them, even when it costs you everything. Yes, she said, that is what my grandmother taught me then. The Emperor said something that shocked everyone in the room, including himself. I'm going to offer you something that no one in galactic history has ever been offered. I am going to offer you my throne. Minji stared at Emperor Thane as if he had spoken in a language she did not understand. Your throne, she repeated slowly. You want to give me your throne? The Emperor nodded. I have ruled for 300 years through fear and conquest, but you have shown me that real power comes from love and sacrifice. The galaxy needs a leader like you, not like me. But I am just a girl from the slums, Minji said. I do not know anything about ruling planets or commanding armies. I have never even been to school. That is exactly why you are perfect for this. The Emperor said, you see people as people, not as subjects to control. You care about individuals, not just numbers. You understand that leadership means serving others, not being served by them. Prince Kale was amazed by his father's decision, but he could see the wisdom in it. Father, you are right. Minji has natural wisdom that cannot be taught. She has shown kindness to enemies and courage in the face of death. She would be a better ruler than either of us. But there was no time to discuss this amazing offer. Admiral Vex's deadline was approaching, and his rebel fleet was getting ready to attack Earth. The rebels had surrounded the planet with ships that could turn cities into dust with their weapons. They were demanding that Emperor Thane surrender his son or watch billions of humans die high above Earth. Admiral Vex sat on the bridge of his flagship waiting for the Emperor's answer. He had spent years planning this moment. He had built a coalition of alien races that hated the royal family. He had promised them freedom from imperial rule in exchange for their loyalty. Now he was so close to victory he could taste it. The Admiral did not care about the humans below. He saw them as nothing more than insects that happened to live on the same planet as his target. He had already given orders to his fleet to prepare for planetary bombardment if the Emperor did not surrender. Prince Kale, soon Admiral Vex would begin destroying human cities. One by one, down in her apartment, Minji was trying to understand the impossible situation. The most powerful man in the galaxy wanted to make her his successor. A rebel army wanted to destroy her world, and somehow her decision would affect the lives of billions of people she had never met. I cannot accept your offer, she told Emperor Thane. I'm not worthy of ruling anyone. I do not have the knowledge or experience that a leader needs. You have something more important than knowledge or experience. The Emperor said, you have a heart that cares about others more than yourself. That is the most important quality a leader can have. Everything else can be learned. Prince Kale took Minji's hand. Minji, you saved my life when you did not even know who I was. You cared for me when I was helpless. You protected me from my own father when you thought he might hurt me. You have already proven that you are a true leader, but the rebels will laugh at the idea of a human ruling the galaxy. Minji said, they will never accept me as their leader. The emperor smiled grimly. Let them laugh. When they see what you can accomplish, they will understand why I chose you. The galaxy is tired of war and conquest. The people want peace and hope you can give them that. Just then another hologram appeared in the room. It was Admiral Vex, and his scarred face was twisted with impatience. Time is up, Emperor. Your answer now. Do you surrender the prince, or do I start destroying human cities? Emperor Thane stepped forward so the Admiral could see him. I have an answer for you, Vex. But it is not what you expect. Admiral Vex leaned forward, eagerly believing that the Emperor was about to surrender his son. Then speak, old man. What is your decision? I am stepping down from the throne, Emperor Thane said, but I am not giving it to you. I am giving it to someone who has proven worthy of it through actions, not through violence. The Admiral laughed harshly. You cannot choose your own successor. That is not how revolutions work. I will take the throne by force and rule as I see fit. But you misunderstand, the Emperor said. I am not giving the throne to another alien. I am giving it to a human, to someone who understands what real leadership means. Admiral Vex stopped laughing and stared in disbelief. A human? You want to give the most powerful position in the galaxy to a primitive human? This is madness. Emperor Thane gestured toward Minji. This human saved my son's life without knowing who he was. She cared for him without expecting any reward. She offered to sacrifice herself to save her people. She has shown more wisdom and courage in 1 week than you have shown in your entire life. The Admiral was so angry he could barely speak. Impossible. I will not allow it. I have 1,000 ships surrounding this planet. I will destroy every human city until you change your mind. But Minji stepped forward and looked directly at the hologram. Even though she was terrified, her voice was steady. Admiral Vex, she said, my name is Minji. I am the human that Emperor Thane wants to make his successor. Admiral Vex stared at her with hatred. A slum girl, he sneered. You think you can rule the galaxy? You do not even rule your own planet. You are right, Minji said. I cannot rule anything. But I can serve people. I can listen to their problems and try to help them solve them. I can protect the weak and care for the sick. I can try to bring peace instead of war. The Admiral laughed again. This is the funniest thing I have ever heard. Human child thinks she can lead a galactic empire. Very well, little girl, try to stop me from taking what is mine by right of conquest. But as Admiral Vex prepared to give the order to attack, something unexpected happened. Reports began coming in. From across his fleet, many of his ships were receiving messages from their homeworlds, messages telling them about the human girl who had saved the Imperial Prince, messages about a new kind of leader who cared more about helping people than conquering them. The rebel coalition had been held together by hatred of the royal family and promises of freedom. But now they were hearing about something different. They were hearing about hope. They were hearing about a leader who would serve them instead of ruling them. Some of the rebel ships began to break away from the fleet. Admiral Vex watched in horror as his carefully built alliance started to crumble. Some species that had joined him out of desperation were now curious about this human alternative. Others that had wanted revenge against the Empire were hearing about a chance for real change instead of just replacing one tyrant with another. You cannot stop what is coming, the Admiral snarled at Minji through the hologram. I will destroy you and your pathetic planet, and then I will take the throne anyway. But Minji surprised him again. I do not want to stop you, Admiral Vex, she said. I want to help you. What? The Admiral stared at her in confusion. You are angry because your people have suffered under Imperial rule, Minji said. You want freedom for your worlds? You want justice for the wrongs that have been done. I want the same things. This is a trick, the Admiral said. No trick. Minji replied, join me, help me build a better galaxy where all species are treated fairly, where worlds govern themselves, where leaders serve their people instead of exploiting them. We can work together to fix what is broken. Admiral Vex was so shocked by this offer that he could not speak for several moments. No one had ever offered to work with him before. Everyone either tried to fight him or surrender to him, but this human girl was offering partnership. It was then that Emperor Thane made his final move. He sent a message to every world in the galaxy showing the Minji caring for Prince Kale when he was small and helpless. He showed them her offer to sacrifice herself for Earth. He showed them her invitation to Admiral Vex to work together for peace within hours. The response was overwhelming. Worlds that had been conquered by the Empire sent messages of support. Alien species that had been enemies for centuries offered to work together under human leadership. The galaxy had been waiting for someone like Minji without even knowing it. Admiral Vex realized that his rebellion was over before it had truly begun. He could still destroy Earth, but doing so would make him a monster in the eyes of the galaxy. He could still try to take the throne by force, but he would be fighting not just the Empire, but millions of beings who now believed in a better way. The choice was his. Emperor Thane stood in the middle of Minja's tiny room like a giant made of starlight and power. His armor was so bright it hurt to look at directly. His presence filled the space, making the air feel thick and heavy. Minji could barely breathe as she looked up at him. Her heart was beating so fast, she thought it might stop. Prince Kale immediately grew back to his normal size, which was almost as tall as his father. Minji gasped as the tiny person she had been caring for suddenly became a full-grown man. The beautiful clothes expanded with him, and his crown grew large and magnificent. But even at his full size, Prince Kale looked small next to his father. The Emperor stared down at Minji with eyes that burned like golden fire. She felt like a mouse being watched by a hawk. She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. Emperor Thane had conquered 1,000 worlds and destroyed entire civilizations that opposed him. The power radiating from him made Minji feel like she might disappear. Father, Prince Kale said, stepping between his father and Minji, this human saved my life. When my escape pod crashed, she found me and took care of me. She has been nothing but kind to me. Emperor Thane looked at his son with surprise. He had expected to find Prince Kale imprisoned or being tortured by primitive aliens. Instead, his son was protecting a human girl who lived in what looked like a storage closet. The Emperor had never seen his son show such fierce loyalty to anyone before. You defend this creature, the Emperor said in a voice like distant thunder. His words made the walls of the apartment shake. You are the crown prince of the stellar dominion, and you protect a being that lives in filth. Minji felt anger rise up inside her chest, stronger than her fear. Nobody had ever called her apartment filth, and she worked hard to keep it clean. She might be poor, but she had pride. Standing up on shaking legs, she looked directly at Emperor Thane. Your son is not a creature, she said. Her voice was small but steady. He is kind and gentle and brave. He told me stories and played games with me. He ate my simple food and said it was delicious. He is more of a gentleman than anyone I have ever met. The Emperor stared at her in shock. No one had dared to speak to him like this in 300 years. Entire armies bowed before him without being asked, but this tiny human girl was lecturing him about his own son. The audacity was so incredible he did not know whether to laugh or turn her into dust. Prince Kale moved closer to Minji and took her hand. Minji cared for me when I was helpless, he said. She fed me and kept me warm and told me stories to help me heal. She asked for nothing in return. She did not even know who I was. The Emperor walked around the small apartment, examining everything. His boots were so heavy they made the floor creak. He picked up Minja's collection of pretty stones and looked at them closely. These are worthless, he said. They are beautiful, Minji said firmly. I found each one myself. They remind me that even in ugly places you can find something wonderful. Emperor Thane studied her face as if he was trying to solve a puzzle. Here was a human who had nothing but thought. Broken glass was treasure. Here was someone who lived in poverty but spoke with dignity. Here was a girl who cared for his son without knowing he was royalty. Tell me, human, he said. What do you want for saving my son's life? Gold jewels, a palace on another world. Minji looked confused. I do not want anything, she said. I am happy that Kale is feeling better. That is enough for me. The Emperor had never heard an answer like this. In his experience, everyone wanted something. Everyone had a price. Everyone could be bought or threatened or manipulated. But this girl seemed different. She really did not want anything except for his son to be safe and happy. Prince Kale squeezed Minja's hand. Do you see, father? She is unlike anyone in our empire. She has something our people have forgotten. She has a pure heart. Emperor Thane continued to examine the apartment. He saw how clean everything was, despite how old and broken it looked. He saw the careful way Minji had arranged her few possessions. He saw the tiny bed she had made for his son. From cotton and thread, he began to understand what Prince Kale meant. I could destroy this entire planet. He said it would be easy. Your people are primitive and weak. They have no defenses against my fleet. Minji felt terror, but she did not back down. If that is what you want to do, then do it, she said, but your son will never forgive you. He has a good heart, and he would not want innocent people to suffer. The emperor laughed, but it was not a cruel laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just heard something amazing. You would die for people you do not even know, he asked. You would sacrifice yourself for strangers. Yes, Minji said simply, that is what people do when they care about each other. We protect each other even when it is dangerous, Prince. Kale looked at his father with hope. He had never seen the emperor look at anyone the way he was looking at Minji. There was something in his father's eyes that had not been there for centuries. Curiosity, respect, maybe even admiration, Father Prince. Kale said, Minji has taught me things that all our teachers and advisors could not. She has shown me what it means to care for someone without expecting anything back. She has shown me what real strength looks like. Emperor Thane walked to the small window and looked out at the slums. He could see humans going about their daily lives despite living in terrible conditions. He saw children playing in the dirty streets. He saw adults sharing food with neighbors who had even less than they did. He saw people helping each other without being asked. These humans, he said, they live like this every day and they still find ways to be kind to each other. Yes. Minji said, they do. My grandmother taught me that being poor does not mean being selfish. When you have little, you learn to share what you have. The emperor turned back to look at her. I have ruled 1,000 worlds, he said. I have more power than any being in the galaxy, but I have never seen anything like what you have shown my son. What have I shown him? Minji asked. You have shown him love without conditions, the emperor said. You cared for him when he was small and helpless. You protected him when he was vulnerable. You asked for nothing in return. This is something that does not exist in my empire. Prince Kale stepped forward. Father, the humans are not primitive. They have something we have lost. They remember how to be truly civilized. Emperor Thane was quiet for a long time. He had spent his life conquering worlds and building an empire based on fear and power, but watching this poor human girl care for his son had shown him something he had forgotten, something his own people had forgotten over centuries of war and conquest. What is your name, human? He asked Minji. She said Minji. He repeated. The emperor of the galaxy was learning the name of a slum girl very well. Minji, I have a proposition for you. Minji woke up to the sound of rain hitting the metal roof of her tiny room. The drops made a loud noise like someone throwing stones at the walls. She rolled off her thin mattress and looked outside through the cracked window. The sky was gray and dirty, like always in this part of New Seoul. The tall buildings around her were covered in rust and black marks from all the smoke that came from the factories. She was 17 years old but looked older because life in the slums was hard. Her clothes were old and had holes in them, but they were clean because Minji always tried to keep herself neat even when everything around her was dirty. Her long black hair was tied back with a piece of string she had found last week. Her hands were rough from working, but her eyes were still bright and full of hope. Today was like every other day. She had to go to the trash mountains and look for things she could sell. The alien ships that flew high above the city sometimes dropped broken technology. And if she was lucky, she could find pieces that still worked. The black market dealers would pay good money for alien tech, even if it was damaged. Minji put on her old boots and grabbed her metal detector. It was broken in some places, but it still made noise when it found metal. She also took her backpack and some plastic bags for carrying things. The rain was getting heavier, but she could not wait. Rain or sunshine, she had to work every day or she would not have money for food. The streets were full of dirty water that came up to her ankles. She walked carefully because sometimes there were holes in the ground that were hidden by the water. Other people were also walking to work. Their faces looked tired and sad. Most of them worked in the factories that made parts for the alien ships, but Minji liked working alone in the trash mountains better. The trash mountains were huge piles of garbage that came from the rich parts of the city and from the space stations above. Most of it was normal trash like food containers and old clothes, but sometimes there were amazing things from other planets. Minji had found strange fruits that glowed in the dark and metal that was lighter than paper. She sold these things to collectors who came from all over the world. Today she climbed up the biggest mountain of trash The rain made everything slippery and she had to be very careful not to fall. The smell was terrible, but Minji was used to it. She had been doing this work for 5 years since her grandmother died and left her alone. She turned on her metal detector and started looking. The detector made small beeping sounds when it found metal, but most of the time it was just old cans or broken tools. Minji dug through piles of wet garbage looking for anything valuable. Her hands got dirty and cold. But she kept working. She had learned that the best things were usually buried deep under other trash. After 2 hours of looking, she found some old computer parts that might be worth something. She put them in her bag and kept searching. The rain was getting worse and she was thinking about going home when her detector started making very loud noises. She had never heard it make sounds like this before. Minji dug faster through a pile of twisted metal and plastic. She could see something glowing under all the garbage. It was a soft golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. She pushed away more trash and found something that made her gasp. It looked like a tiny person no bigger than her hand. The small figure was wearing beautiful clothes that seemed to be made of light itself. There was a tiny crown on its head that sparkled like stars. The skin looked smooth and perfect, like it was made of moonlight. But what surprised Minji most was that the tiny person was breathing. She could see the chest moving up and down very slowly. Minji had seen many strange things in the trash mountains, but never anything like this. The tiny person looked like the expensive dolls she had seen in shop windows when she was little, but this was not a toy. This was alive. She picked it up very carefully. The tiny body was warm and felt real. The moment she touched the small figure, something strange happened. Minji felt a warm feeling spread through her chest, like drinking hot soup on a cold day. The tiny person seemed to glow brighter for a moment, and she could swear she saw the small eyes move under the closed eyelids. Minji looked around to make sure no one was watching her. Then she took off her jacket and made a soft nest inside one of the pockets. She placed the tiny person inside very gently. The jacket was old, but it was dry and warm. She could feel the small body against her side as she walked. She decided to go home right away. The tiny person needed help, and Minji was the only one who could give it. She had always been good at taking care of things. Her grandmother used to say that Minji had healing hands because sick animals always got better when she cared for them. The walk home seemed longer than usual. Minji kept checking to make sure the tiny person was still breathing. She talked to it in soft whispers, telling it that everything would be okay and that she would take care of it. She did not know if it could hear her, but talking made her feel better. Back in her small apartment, Minji cleared off her only table and laid down a clean towel. She took the tiny person out of her jacket pocket and placed it on the soft cloth. The apartment was not much, just one room with a bed, a table, and a small stove, but it was clean and warm. Minji filled a bowl with warm water and found a soft cloth. She very carefully cleaned the tiny person, washing away the dirt and grime from the trash. The beautiful clothes seemed to clean themselves as soon as the water touched them. The tiny crown sparkled even brighter under her small lamp. As she worked, Minji noticed that the tiny person had small cuts and bruises that looked like they came from a fight or an accident. She did not have medicine for aliens, but she had some healing herbs that her grandmother had taught her to use. She made a weak tea and used a tiny spoon to put drops on the wounds. The strangest thing happened when the herb tea touched the cuts. They started to heal right away, much faster than any human wound would heal. Minji watched in amazement as the bruises faded and the cuts closed up. She had never seen anything like it. She made a soft bed for the tiny person. Using cotton from an old pillowcase, she placed it next to her own pillow so she could watch over it through the night. The tiny person looked peaceful now, like it was having good dreams. The golden glow was softer now, but still beautiful. Minji sat on her bed and looked at the amazing creature she had found. She wondered where it came from and how it had ended up in the trash. She wondered if there were others like it somewhere looking for it. She wondered if she was doing the right thing by keeping it, but as she watched the tiny chest rise and fall with each breath, she knew she could not have left it in the garbage. The tiny person needed help, and Minji would give it everything she could. She did not know that she had just saved the most important person in the galaxy. She did not know that her life was about to change forever. As the night got darker, Minji lay down on her bed but kept one eye open, watching her tiny guest. She whispered stories about her grandmother and about the beautiful things she had found in the trash. She hoped that somehow her voice would help the tiny person Heel faster high above the Earth, ships that could destroy planets were searching for the small figure that now slept safely in a slum girl apartment, but Minji knew nothing about this. She only knew that she had found something precious, and she would protect it with her life. When the tiny person opened his eyes 3 days later, Minji was sitting beside the table, eating her breakfast of rice and dried fish. She had been checking on him every few minutes for 3 days, worried that he might stop breathing the moment she saw those golden eyes looking at her. She nearly dropped her bowl. The tiny person sat up slowly and looked around the small apartment. Then he looked directly at Minji and spoke in perfect Korean. His voice was small but clear, like a tiny bell, ringing. "Hello, kind one. I am Prince Kale of the Stellar Dominion, and I believe you have saved my life." Minji stared at him with her mouth open. She had expected many things, but not this. The tiny person was talking to her in her own language and calling himself a prince. She set down her bowl very carefully because her hands were shaking. "Are you real?" she whispered. Prince Kale smiled, and it was the most beautiful smile Minji had ever seen. "I am as real as you are, dear one. I come from a star system very far from here. My people can change our size when we need to right now. I am small because I was hurt and my body is trying to heal itself." Minji leaned closer to the table so she could hear him better. "You are from space?" She said it was not a question because she had suspected this from the moment she found him, but she had never imagined that someone from space would be so small and so beautiful. "Yes, I am from space," Prince Kale said. He stood up and walked to the edge of the towel. His tiny crown caught the light from her lamp. "My ship was attacked by rebels who want to destroy my family. I escaped in a small pod, but it crashed somewhere in your trash mountains." Minji felt sad hearing this story. "You were hurt and alone," she said. "Just like me when my grandmother died. I found you, and now you are not alone anymore." Prince Kale looked at her with surprise. No one had ever compared their situation to his before. He was royalty, and she was a poor girl from the slums, but somehow she understood exactly how he felt. "You are very wise," he said. "Where I come from, people only care about power and wealth. They would not understand what you just said." Over the next few days, Minji and Prince Kale became friends. She would sit by the table and tell him about her life in the slums, and he would tell her about the amazing worlds he had visited. He described planets made of crystal where the cities sang in the wind. He told her about oceans in space where creatures swam between the stars. Minji shared her simple meals with him. She would put tiny drops of soup in a bottle cap and small grains of rice on a leaf. Prince Kale had never eaten such simple food, but he said it was the most delicious meal he had ever had because it was made with kindness. He told her that his people lived for hundreds of years and that he was already 300 years old, but still considered young by his people's standards. This amazed Minji, who was only 17. She asked him what it was like to live so long, and he said it was lonely because people always wanted something from him. "But you do not want anything from me," he said. "You take care of me because I needed help. This is something I have never experienced before in my world. Everyone who is kind to me wants money or power or favors from my father." Minji did not understand what he meant. "You need help," she said simply. "When someone needs help, you help them. That is what my grandmother taught me. It does not matter if they are rich or poor or from another planet." Prince Kale stared at her for a long time, as if he was seeing something wonderful for the first time. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a very special person," he said. "She was," Minji said with a smile. "She taught me that we are all connected like threads in a cloth. When one thread is broken, it affects all the others, so we must take care of each other." As the days passed, Prince Kale grew stronger. His wounds healed completely, and his golden glow became brighter. He could walk around the entire table now and even climb up small objects. Minji made him a tiny bed from cotton and silk thread she found in her sewing box, but something else was happening that neither of them noticed. High above the earth, the largest fleet of spaceships ever assembled was moving toward their planet. The ships were so big they could swallow cities. The leader of this fleet was Emperor Thane, Prince Kale's father, and he was not happy. Emperor Thane had been searching for his son for weeks. He had torn apart solar systems looking for any trace of Prince Kale's escape pod. His ships had destroyed asteroid fields and scanned every planet in 3-star systems. Now his instruments had finally detected his son's life signature on this small blue planet. The Emperor was famous across the galaxy for his power and his anger. When his enemies saw his ships coming, they usually surrendered without fighting. but now his only son was missing and someone on this primitive planet had him. The Emperor did not know if Prince Kale was being held prisoner or tortured or worse down. In her small apartment, Minji was teaching Prince Kale how to play a card game. Her grandmother had shown her the cards were bigger than he was, so she had to help him hold them. They laughed together as he tried to understand the rules. It was the first time in his long life that Prince Kale had played a game just for fun. Prince Kale was amazed by how Minji could find joy in such simple things. She showed him her collection of pretty stones and pieces of colored glass that she had found in the trash. He told her these were more beautiful than the jewels in his father's treasury because she had chosen them with love. I wish I could show you my world. He said you would love the floating gardens and the cities made of light. But I am afraid my father will find me soon, and when he does, everything will change. Why? Minji asked, what will happen? Prince Kale looked sad. My father is the emperor of many worlds. When he finds me, he will take me back home. He will think that people on this planet kidnapped me. He might hurt innocent people to get me back. Minji felt scared, but not for herself. She was scared for Prince Kale. She could see that he did not want to leave her. Will you have to go? She asked. Prince Kale nodded. I am his only son. I must return to take his place someday. But I do not want to leave you. You are the first real friend I have ever had. Just then, the air in the room began to shimmer like heat waves on a hot day. Prince Kale jumped to his feet and his face went white. Someone is coming, he whispered, someone very powerful. The shimmering grew brighter, and suddenly a figure appeared in the middle of Minji's small room. It was a man taller than anyone she had ever seen. His armor gleamed like liquid metal, and his eyes glowed with golden light. The air around him felt heavy like before a thunderstorm. Father, Prince Kale said, and his voice was very small. Emperor Thane looked down at his son, who was still tiny, on the table. Then he looked at Minji, who was frozen with fear on her bed. The most powerful being in the galaxy had just appeared in her home, and she did not know if she was about to die. Admiral Vex stared at the messages flooding in from across the galaxy. Worlds that had supported his rebellion were now asking about this human leader. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were offering to work together under her guidance. Even some of his own officers were asking if they could meet with Minji to discuss peace. The admiral realized that something had changed in the galaxy. Something he had not expected. When people heard about a leader who served instead of ruling, they wanted to be part of it. When they heard about someone who offered partnership instead of conquest, they chose hope over revenge. Very well, he said finally, his voice heavy with defeat. I will not destroy your world, human, but I will not serve you either. I will take my ships and leave this system. If you fail to bring the peace you promise, I will return. Minji nodded respectfully. I understand, Admiral Vex. I hope someday you will see that we can accomplish more together than apart. But I will not force you to stay. Your choice to leave without fighting shows that you are a better person than you think you are, Admiral. Vex was surprised by her words. No one had ever called him a good person before. He had spent so many years fighting and killing that he had forgotten he had once wanted to help his people. Now this human girl was reminding him of who he used to be. Rebel fleets slowly withdrew from Earth, leaving behind a galaxy that was ready for change. But the real work was just beginning. Minji had to learn how to be a leader while also learning about thousands of different alien cultures. Each species had different needs, different histories, different ways of thinking. Emperor Thane became her teacher and advisor. He showed her how the government worked and introduced her to the leaders of important worlds. He explained the complex treaties and trade agreements that held the galaxy together, but most importantly, he taught her that she did not have to make every decision alone. Prince Kale became her closest friend and eventually her husband. He helped her understand alien technology and translated when she met with species that communicated in ways humans could not naturally understand together. They visited worlds that had been oppressed and listened to grievances that had been ignored for centuries. The transformation of the galaxy did not happen overnight. It took years of careful work to change systems that had been built on conquest and fear, but slowly things began to improve. Worlds that had been forced to give tribute to the Empire were allowed to keep their resources for their own people. Species that had been enemies were brought together to solve common problems. Minji established new laws that protected the weak and gave voice to those who had been silenced. She created programs to share technology and knowledge. between worlds so that everyone could benefit from scientific advances. She set up courts where disputes between species could be resolved peacefully instead of through war, but what made the biggest difference was her approach to leadership. Instead of ruling from a distant palace, Minji traveled constantly. She visited refugee camps and talked to families who had lost everything in wars. She went to poor worlds and helped develop their economies. She met with children and listened to their dreams for the future. Earth became the new capital of the galaxy, not because humans had conquered anyone, but because they had shown everyone a better way to live. The slums where Minji had grown up were transformed into centers of learning where beings from across the galaxy came to study human concepts of community, cooperation, and compassion. Children who had once dug through trash for survival now played with young aliens whose parents had traveled from distant stars to learn from humanity's example. The trash mountains were turned into parks and gardens where species from hundreds of worlds could meet and become friends. Minji never forgot where she came from. She kept her old apartment exactly as it had been and often returned there when she needed to think. She would sit at the same table where she had first met Prince Kale and remember the lessons her grandmother had taught her about taking care of others. The coronation ceremony took place 5 years after that day when Minji had found what she thought was a glowing doll in the trash. Representatives from 10,000 worlds came to Earth to witness the official transfer of power. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy so that everyone could see their new leader, but Minji insisted that the ceremony be different from traditional coronations. Instead of having people bow to her, she bowed to them. She promised to serve them faithfully and asked for their help in building a better galaxy together. She wore a simple white dress instead of elaborate robes and a crown made from flowers given to her by children from different worlds. The most moving moment came at the end of the ceremony when Emperor Thane stepped forward to perform the final ritual. In the old days, this would have been a gesture of submission from a defeated enemy, but today it was something else entirely. It was a father blessing a daughter. It was a teacher honoring a student. It was an old leader welcoming a new one. Emperor Thane gently kissed Minji's forehead in the traditional gesture of respect given to those who rule with wisdom rather than force. As he did, the entire galaxy watched and understood that something fundamental had changed. Power was no longer about who could destroy the most enemies. It was about who could help the most people. In that moment, the girl from the slums had truly become the heart of an empire built on hope instead of fear. She had shown the galaxy that the most important kind of strength was not the power to hurt others, but the courage to help them. She had proven that real leadership meant lifting others up, not pushing them down. Years later, when historians wrote about this time, they would call it the Great Transformation. They would describe how a young human woman changed the course of galactic civilization, not through conquest or technology, but through simple acts of kindness and compassion. They would tell the story of how the galaxy learned to choose love over fear. But Minji knew the truth. The transformation had not started with her coronation or even with her meeting Prince Kale. It had started long before, with her grandmother teaching a little girl that all beings were connected like threads in a cloth. It had started with the lesson that when one thread was broken, it affected all the others and that they must take care of each other. As Empress Minji stood before the assembled leaders of 10,000 worlds, she often thought